Well, kids, finally we are here where you can ask me, Aja, how do we get ready for the future? You said all the bad things that you did to our future with your consumption, your cars, your fossil fuel burning, and your father, your grandfather, your great grandfather, and so on and so forth. We have all this global warming that's already here, and you said the CO2 is not going to disappear anytime soon. But now you better not leave us hanging here. You told us all the bad things that are happening. You have to tell us what I can do about my own future. Right? So that's what we're going to try to learn here. Ready for the future from all corners of the globe. Architects, engineers, and politicians visit the Netherlands to see how the country deals with water. If you heard about the Netherlands, you probably heard about the little boy with a finger in the dike, because the country is well known for its flooding. And by the way, during the Little Ice Age from the 16th century to about the 17th, 18th century, it had also frozen over a lot. It's very close to the sea level and can easily flood. Half of Netherlands is below sea level, so the people there know how to keep things dry. They have learned over time. Most of these visitors come from large coastal cities like New York, Jakarta, and Shanghai to see just what the Dutch are doing to survive below the sea level. They want to know what they can do to protect their inhabitants from storms and flooding. Dutch companies are only too happy to give them tours. They are proud of what they can do and hope to be able to continue their work on the other side of the globe with the expertise they have learned over centuries. Many of these tours pass through Rotterdam and surrounding areas. If you don't ask any tricky questions, you are welcome to come along. Well, sometimes you can ask tricky questions and get some good answers. So we'll start the tour at the floating houses. Their residents are never troubled by high water. The houses were built just recently and then transported here onto the water. A rope attaches them to the shore so you just don't drift away into the open ocean. When the water rises or falls, the house is just going up and down, and you can see like this ducky is looking at the house. Somebody sitting on the roof with a nice umbrella and saying, why are these people not scared of the water going up and down? I'm used to it, but why is this house also going up and down like me? And they got a little boat here that they can take and go out into town anytime they want to have pizza and dinner and so on. And here are people coming from Jakarta and Shanghai and New York in a bus with their rubber boots on. We will start the tour at the floating houses, as we said, and a rope attaches these houses to the shore, as we said. So here are people sitting at the swimming pool happily, on a skateboard and so on. So come on, let's go to Benteplein. I don't know how it's pronounced. Benteplein, a square Rotterdam's climate-proof district, a square in Rotterdam's climate-proof district. We are in luck. It's been raining hard. It's in lots of cities. The water has nowhere to go. That is because there's concrete and asphalt everywhere. When we build cities, we are paving everything. When the drains flood, the streets will fill with water like a bathtub. The sewers simply aren't made for such a lot of rain coming at once. So during a rainstorm, it's a good idea to hold on to the water for a while and to let it drain into the ground later. That's exactly what they do on Bentemplein. There is a sort of a pit there made out of steps. You can see this. That's not a swimming pool, as I mentioned. When it's dry, you can skate on it. As you can see, the little kid here, the kid is given up and waiting for the water to clear, so you can skate down here and skate up here and so on and so forth. Right, so I keep losing track of where I am. That's exactly what they do on Bentemplein. There is a sort of a pit. They're made out of steps. When it's dry, you can skate in it or play baseball or just hang out. When it's raining hard, the water runs off the roofs and the streets into the pit, as you can see here. That saves some space in the sewer, otherwise the sewer water will be mixing with regular rainwater and creating lots of health issues and so on. Now let's take the bus to the Indragastpolder. Indragspolder. You figure it out how to pronounce. I am not Dutch and I barely can speak English. The visitors will have their faces pushed up against the windows here. This is the Dutch polder landscape they have heard of so much in the news and so much. I didn't even say it right. This is the Dutch polder landscape they have heard so much about. Once everyone is off the bus, we will walk along the dikes. Here is a little sheep and a field there, and here is a canal that dike is built up. So you have a river, you have a sea there meeting here, and you have a dike here that has, can close and can open as needed. And here is the stork or a heron or whatever's talking about wet feet here. Welcome to 5 meters below sea level, says the tour guide. Some of the guests give the dikes a worried look. What if it just suddenly collapses? The Dutch don't want to go on endlessly raising and strengthening the dikes. That takes up a lot of space, can cost a lot of money, of course, and it doesn't make the river water any lower. When it rains hard, the local rivers, the Rot, sometimes overflows because of climate change. This is happening more and more often. So the Indragatspolder has been adapted to collect large amounts of water. In the event of an emergency, the gates open and the water from the Rot river flows straight into the polder where it doesn't bother anyone. Come on back onto the bus, everyone. Now we are going for a bit of a drive. It's time to tell you something about the salinization. Means water is getting more salt from somewhere. Don't fall asleep. Particularly along the coast, farmers are having increasing problems with the salty waters coming into the soil, and they can only come from one place, that's the sea. As long as there is a layer of fresh water on top of it, it's not a problem for the plants, but the heat is making the fresh water evaporate more quickly, as you know by now, and the rising sea level is adding more salt to the water. Scientists are doing experiments to reduce the salt water and to maintain the level of the fresh water so that they can grow crops and let the trees live. And they are also experimenting with the vegetables that can withstand salt water. So that's kind of a genetic modification or grafting or mixing together different species, like a sea lavender or a samphire, also known as the sea beans and sea asparagus. How tasty is that? Suddenly everyone looks left, where you can already see the massive white structure of the Meeslengtering, the largest moving flood defense system in the world. Here it is, Meeslengtering. The bus loops around and stops in the parking lot where you get out. You can really see just how powerful those two white arms are. The guide explains that they reach almost the same height as the Eiffel Tower in Paris, but on this side of the river. On either side of the water, there is an arm with a sturdy barrier attached to it, as you can see here. When the water gets really high, the barriers roll across the bottom of the channel to the middle, fill with water, and close off the Nieuwe Waterweg Canal, protecting 1.5 million people in and around Rotterdam. All these Dutch names obviously I cannot pronounce, but you can go on Google and try to figure it out and make a recording and send me and say, Grandpa, this is how you have to pronounce it. Okay, it's too late for me to learn, kids. I'm learning a lot of things, but Dutch is not one of them. However, the Dutch are already thinking about better solutions. Climate change means that the Meeslengtering will have to close more often, and that means there's a greater chance of making mistakes. What if there's a problem and it gets stuck? What if the dikes break? So now There is a website where people who live nearby can see how high the chance of flooding is in their neighborhood. They type in their address and read how high the water will come if the dikes break. So here is all the river water, the sea water that's coming here into the Rot River, and so on and so on. Okay, so they type in their address and read how high water will come if the dikes break, and what they should do if that's the case. Trying to escape can be dangerous, as the roads might be jammed and the water could catch up with them and the car may just float away. But if they stay at home, they need to be able to take care of themselves for a few days with enough water and food and maybe some kind of an electricity or candles and flashlights and batteries and so on. Wouldn't it be a better idea also to tackle the causes of climate change so that these things stop happening more and more often and the water level recedes, and to make sure that fewer greenhouse gases enter the air, which is causing all these things? Well, that's easy enough to say. We should do that, but how? How? This is a question you have, and it's a fair question, and I better give you some answers, because I am responsible for all that's happened now, at least partly. My father, my grandfather, great grandfather, and so on were part of this as well, even though they lived in India and didn't emit much, and they were just waiting for the rich people to send them things like TVs, radios, telephones, bicycles, and so on and so forth. So we did consume things that emit carbon, so we are partly responsible as well. So we'll come back and look at a few things that you can do yourself to help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But I should again remind you, do not feel guilty. This is not all your fault, and there is only so much you can do at your young age. The best thing you can do is to do the best you can in terms of reducing emissions and doing things that you can do. You can also tell your parents on what you learned and ask the teachers questions and think about what you will do as you grow up to reduce the emissions. Okay, so we'll talk about those sorts of things when we come back, and right now I need to go and eat lunch and make sure I don't eat too much meat and don't waste food and don't waste water and so on and so forth. Can you think every day about what to do? Well, it can get tiring. So do the best you can and don't feel guilty all the time, or don't feel scared and anxious. Okay, we'll come back and learn more exciting things about what you can do. See you in the next podcast after my lunch.